For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andy. I'm one of the pastors here. Did you guys have a good break?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a mixed response. It was like 4 weeks long. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I had a great break. It was busy, but there's some rest involved. One of the best moments that I had during this break was at a Christmas Eve family service. My brother, his church puts on this Christmas Eve family service, and both of my nieces were singing there. And Taylor had a chance to be there as well. That was really sweet. And basically, so they have all the kids sing at one point, and they all come up on like these rafters, and they're singing. And the best part was the first graders to the sixth graders. My niece, she's 6 years old. Her name's Leah. She's in first grade, and they bring all the kids up, and all the kids, they're dressed in their finest. They're on the stage. They're ready to go, and they start singing. And, typical kids, they just are like, they're dressed up and they're like, I don't want to be dressed up. I don't want to be singing on Christmas Eve, and I don't want to be in front of all these people. So you have the kids are there out of obligation, and they're just like mouthing the words. You're like, some of them are dressed up as shepherds and angels, and just imagine if you're a guy and you're like dressed up as an angel, you're like, this is the most embarrassing moment of my life. So they all are like, just kind of like ho-hum, they're just kind of like singing there. And then you have my niece. And she's in the front row, and she's just like, she's singing, and then she starts tapping her foot. And then she starts like swaying her legs. And then she like starts lifting her head up, and she has this huge smile on her face. And she's just like singing her little heart out. To the point that a parent came up afterwards and talked to my brother and sister-in-law, and they're like, oh my gosh, like she was like the best part of the whole show because she just lit up the room. And that was just my favorite part. And I think there's just something different about a person who's really enjoying God. I think they just stand out. There's just something different about a person who is really enjoying God. I had an opportunity to visit a lot of churches over basically the entire holiday season from Thanksgiving and until now. Some of these churches are really big churches, and so you enter in, there's this huge auditorium, and if you're like, this is like your first or second time here, maybe the question that runs in your head when you come into a church is, are they worshiping? And that's the thought that was in my mind as I entered into these places. I'm like, are they worshiping? And then I started thinking about the question. I'm like, do you think God would rather have an auditorium or a stadium filled with people who are just there, or a room filled with people who have laid down everything for Him? And the question for us is, are we that room? Are we worshiping? Like today when you came, are you expectant? Like when you come on Sundays, or when you came today, are you expecting to see the face of God? Are you expecting to witness who He is? Are you expecting to see the bigness of who He is? Are you just here? And we are, what I know is that we all worship. This is kind of that first point in your bulletin, is that we all worship something or someone. Every single one of us, whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, or whether you grew up in church or you didn't grow up in church, whatever walk of life, wherever you're at in your spiritual journey, we all worship. We all give worth and praise to something or someone. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that's what we're going to be talking about over the next 2 months. We're going through this series called Magnificent, and magnificent, the definition is, and you can write this down because we're going to be talking about it for 2 months. The definition is of exceptional size and beauty. Exceptional size and beauty. And the question for us today is, what are we worshiping? And is it of exceptional size and beauty? So if you guys want to flip with me to Psalm 96, we're going to be digging through this passage in the Psalms. This passage is just incredible. I've been stewing on it over the last month. And here we go. We're just going to be starting out in verses 1 through 3. It Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Proclaim His salvation day after day. Declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous deeds among all peoples. The first point in your bulletin is worship. We need to sing a new song. This psalm right here is a call to worship. Later in verses 11, he continues. It says, let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound and all that is in it, let the fields be jubilant and everything in them, that all the trees of the forest will sing for joy. That basically the writer is saying, let the seas and everything in them worship. Let the fields and everything in them worship. Let the trees worship. Let all the nations. He's basically saying all of creation worship. Like all of creation should be giving praise. You also see the verbs, the command words in this passage. It says sing, 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 praise, proclaim, declare. That it's very clear that the writer wants us to come into worship. You might be thinking, what is worship? Worship is basically this word, I believe it's an English word for worth-ship. To basically give something worth, to give something value, to exalt it, to praise it, to glorify it, to lift it up, to make much of, to make great. And in this psalm, it's interesting because the writer of this psalm is David. It doesn't say it actually in my version, but if we look at this passage, this exact psalm is in 1 Chronicles 16. And what's happening in 1 Chronicles 15 and 16 is that David is bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. What had happened is that, if you don't know what the Ark is basically, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's the 10 Commandments are in this Ark, and basically they had this Ark in a tent, and only one guy, one time during the entire year, could come into this place and be in front of the Ark, because the Ark basically had God's glory and God's presence over the Ark, and it's kind of a big deal, even to the point if you didn't treat the Ark a certain way, you actually died. The Ark is a big deal because it's kind of like God's throne. But what happened is that the Ark was in Israel, and then it got stolen by Israel's enemies. The Philistines have the Ark. And so the people feel man, what the heck, we've lost the presence of God. And what David does is that he gets the Ark back, and then he brings the Ark back into Jerusalem. And then he's bringing the Ark back into Jerusalem, and it describes this huge celebration. That there's it says all of Israel worshipped. All of Israel was part of this celebration. Can you imagine that? If the entire United States was in this huge procession, millions of people. They didn't have millions of people, but they had 1 million or so. They're all coming into Jerusalem worshiping, excited. The armies are there, the priests are there, they're blowing trumpets, they're playing lyres or lyres, whatever those are, harp, they're playing instruments, there's a ram's horn, everyone's going crazy, they're singing and dancing, they're worshiping, the entire procession is going in, and then there's this really interesting part in this passage, and it talks about David's wife, Michal. And it says that she looked at David dancing, and she looked at him with disdain. Think of that. This is basically the throne of God, the presence of God coming back into the city, going right by her, and she isn't worshiping. Everyone else is, except for her. Let me ask you a question. Is it possible that the presence of God is actually is basically going right beside our window, and we are actually not worshiping? Is it possible? And I think the reason why she isn't worshiping is that she has something else on the throne. She just doesn't value the throne. There's something else that's on the throne. And let me ask the question, what do you think is on the throne? Because we all have these throne rooms. We all have these places in our heart that that's where we worship. There's something in there that's where we worship. We all have these throne rooms in our heart. And the question I'm asking is what is on that throne? When you come into that throne room, when you're worshiping, what is on that throne? And I thought of 3 things. And the first thing, and this is I believe it's your A in the bulletin, is just man-made gods. Man-made gods. And let me share a story here. Felicia and I, we bought our Honda Civic a couple years ago. It was our first car. If you guys have ever had like a brand new car, you're like, what? You're like, you have the new car smell, and like the new car smell should be bottled up in like a cologne or something. How great would that be? But it's like the greatest smell, and you're like, this new car is so awesome, like it's ours, this is great, it's not going to break down, and so it's like a couple months after we got this car, and we hung out with Ed and Tammy. And if you know Ed and Tammy, they love Texas Roadhouse. And Texas Roadhouse is awesome, by the way. So if you ever want to like take them out to dinner or anything, just go to Texas Roadhouse because it's fantastic. But anyways, we decided to do like carry out from Texas Roadhouse. So we called everything in. They go and they pile everything in a bag. And I mean, you got the rolls, you got the chicken tenders, you got like salads, which is not really my thing. You got all this like mashed potatoes. You have all this stuff in this bag. Ed gets in the car. I'm carrying this big bag, and it's like filled to the brim. And I give him this bag. So he's sitting in the seat, and there's like 2 salads on top, and he's like trying to like jockey these salads in order to like stay in the bag, and he fumbles one of the salads, and the salad pops out of his arm and just spills all over my car. But it's not just like lettuce or carrots. It's like egg and cheese. Just imagine a hot summer day and you have egg and cheese in your car. It's going to ruin the car smell, the new car smell. What the heck? And my immediate response was like, oh my God, oh my God. And then Ed responds and says, Andy, are you calling your car a god? He says it's one of the greatest moments of his life. Probably up there with like the birth of his children and his wedding. But we all place these items on this throne. I'll give you another for instance. Like just a couple weeks ago, it was like 3 days before we had to move in. I bought a MacBook Pro. I love it because my computer got stolen, so I got this new MacBook. There's an accident that happened. Water got spilled onto the MacBook Pro. If you guys, some of you computer engineers, you know that water and electricity, a really, really bad combination. It totally fried my motherboard and my keyboard. My computer was like fried inside out. I didn't have a computer for 2 weeks. Just imagine that. I mean, your computer is probably your most prized possession, maybe your phone, I don't know. But it's like, just imagine not having your computer or a phone for like 2 weeks. Like, I get my computer back. I gotta be honest, it was kind of sick. I took my computer and I held it in my arms and I rocked it. And I was like, I am so glad to have you back. Like, I am never going to let this happen to you again. Like, you're going to go really nice. I'm going to lay you down in your box. It's going to be really nice. Another example. We just bought a house. Thank you guys. There's like 15 of you who helped us move in. It was like the biggest blessing in the world. You guys are amazing. But it was last Saturday, and it was that day where it just rained. It was like Noah's flood. It rained for like the whole day, and it wasn't just like a rain that came like this. It was a rain that came like this, and it came into our chimney. We have a lid on our chimney, but for some reason it like leaked into our chimney, and it filled up our chimney, and then it came out over the hearth and onto our hardwood floor. If you don't know anything about hardwood floors, which I didn't know, it's basically all just like crushed up wood, and when you get water in there, it splits up all the crushed up wood and it starts to bubble. I find this out at like 1 o'clock in the morning last Saturday, and here I am, like first time like homeowner. I am on my hands and knees at 1 o'clock in the morning, blow drying my hardwood floor. Like, you guys might laugh now, but someday you'll be there. But here's the thing. This is my point, is that it might not be a house right now, and it might not be a new car or a car, and it might not even be a computer, but we all have these items that we cherish and treasure and are of high worth to us. And sometimes they can be even placed on that throne. I don't know if you guys have an item like that. The second thing that is on our throne is just simply ourselves. You might be saying, well, how do I know that? Let me ask this question. What is the majority of your time in prayer focused on? Is it focused on yourself, or is it focused on God and others? What do you think? What is the majority of your time in prayer focused on? Is it on you, or is it on God and other people? I think all of us can fall into this trap of, we kind of have our agenda, we kind of have things that we want to do, we have our own hopes, we have our own dreams, and we're like, God, this is where I'm going. Now just kind of come into my life and just bless my life. Like, just kind of be about me. Have you ever played that bargaining game where you're just like, God, like, I'll go to church like this week because I really want like a good grade on the test, or I really want like this girl or this guy to like me, so like, I'm going to come to this, or I'm going to be like the best Christian possible. Like, we kind of bargain with God. We're kind of like, God, I really want this. Now just be about what I want. Whether that's a relationship or a career, or even in ministry. I've done the same thing. I'm like, God, we're going to do this because I just want success. At the root, I want success, but really just, that's what I want. Now just come into what I'm doing and bless me. Bless my agenda. But when he challenges that, when he's not about what we're about, when he's not about our agenda, that's when it's like, that's when there's an issue. That's when there's anger, there's frustration. I don't know if you guys have ever found yourself at that point, like, God, why won't you give me what I want? I think we can also look at God kind of like a safety valve, or an insurance policy, or a get-out-of-jail-free card. That's kind of like, man, I'm just, I'm okay. I've been okay. I haven't really needed God for a while. And then when like stuff happens and it hits the fan and there's a problem that arises, all of a sudden it's like, God, I need you. And he wants, like, the thing is, he wants to be there. He's involved in our problems, but where was our hearts this whole time? It's just kind of like an emergency. I need you in an emergency, but other than that, I'm like, okay. I can do it on my own. I think also we can kind of make God into our own image. We can kind of conform him to our opinions and our standards. That's like, well, I won't worship a God if he says this or believes in this, right? This part of the Bible I don't really agree with, so I'm not going to really uphold that. But these things that I really like, that make me feel really good, that they agree with what I feel and in my opinion, these are the things I'm going to hold on to. And then we basically look at life and we start picking and choosing the philosophies and the mottos and the little truths or isms that we want, and then we basically create and concoct this God in our own image. I don't know if you guys have ever done that. Like, man, God is a God of love, that's great, but he is not a God of judgment. I think we've all done that. Here's the thing, it is impossible to bow down when you are on the throne. It is impossible to bow down when you're on the throne. We can't do it. When we're sitting there, we cannot do it. The third thing is that maybe we have a smaller version of God. Maybe we just have a small view of him. That's the right God, but it's just not big enough. And let me share a quote from A.W. Tozer's The Knowledge of the Holy. I hope you guys have been reading this. Like, we're going to be kind of like touching on it throughout the entire semester. This book is like ripping my face off. It's amazing. And this is from the preface. He says, the church has surrendered her once lofty concept of God and has substituted it for one so low, so ignoble, as to be utterly unworthy of thinking, worshiping men. This she has done not deliberately, but little by little, and without her knowledge. And her unawareness only makes her situation all the more tragic. The low view of God entertained almost universally among Christians is the cause of 100 lesser evils everywhere among us. A whole new philosophy of the Christian life has resulted from this one basic error in our religious thinking. With our loss of the sense of majesty has come the further loss of religious awe and consciousness of the divine presence. We have lost our spirit of worship and our ability to withdraw inwardly to meet God in adoring silence. Modern Christianity is simply not producing the kind of Christian who can appreciate or experience the life in the Spirit. The words, be still and know that I am God, mean next to nothing to the self-confident, bustling worshiper in this middle period of the 20th century. This loss of the concept of majesty has come just when the forces of religion are making dramatic gains and the churches are more prosperous than at any time within the past several hundred years. But the alarming thing is that our gains are mostly external and our loss is wholly internal. And since it is the quality of our religion that is affected by internal conditions, it may be that our supposed gains are but losses spread over a wider field. The only way to recoup our spiritual losses is to go back to the cause of them and make such corrections as the truth warrants. The decline of the knowledge of the holy has brought on our troubles. A rediscovery of the majesty of God will go a long way toward curing them. It is impossible to keep our moral practices sound and our inward attitudes right when our idea of God is erroneous or inadequate. If we would bring back spiritual power to our lives, we must begin to think of God more nearly as He is. There's this quote also from Spurgeon, and this is kind of the quote in your bulletin. It says that praise is proportionate to the object of worship. Basically what that means is that if our view of God is actually proportionate to how we will worship. Like if we have a small view of God, we will have small worship. If we have a small view of God, we'll have a small view on grace. We have a small view of God, we'll have a small view of love. We have a small view of God, we will have a small view of the cross. We have a small view of God, we'll actually have a small view of our need for the cross. That our view of God is imperative to how and whether we actually are worshipers. It's like Jesus says, He says that they honor me. He talks about vain worship. And He's like, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. You look at David and they have this ark, and this ark has been with their enemies, and they're bringing this ark back in, and this ark symbolizes and represents the renewed presence of God into their nation. Like they are witnessing God coming back. Like they are having an opportunity to come in closer, and they're worshiping. And here's the thing, we have to witness God in order to worship God. We have to witness God in order to worship God. We have to see God as so much bigger in order to worship God in the way that He actually deserves. It's imperative for us. And this is point number 2. Is we have to witness. God is bigger and better. And I hope that phrase is the phrase that you hear over and over and over and over the next 2 months. Is that God is bigger and God is better. That only God can be placed on that throne. And this is what Isaiah saw. This is what Isaiah saw in Isaiah 6. He basically sees this vision of God on the throne, and he sees God like great and exalted, and like the train of God's robe is like filling up the entire temple. And basically there's this seraphim, which are like these angels, and they're like singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." And they're constantly like praising Him. Constantly. That's what they do. They were created just to praise Him. Then the doorposts are shaking. There's smoke filling the room. Isaiah's like seeing the bigness of who God is, and his only response is, "Oh, woe is me." Because he realizes that he is a man, but not only just a man, but he is a man of unclean lips. And he's like, this God could just take me out. This God is just so much bigger than what I've given Him credit for. And like oh my gosh, like I don't even belong in His presence. I don't even belong in His presence. Like it says here in the passage in verses 4 through 6, it says, "For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods, for all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him, strength and glory are in His sanctuary. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods." He is the God that made the heavens. I think the truth is that we must have an Isaiah moment in order to be true worshipers of God. We must have an Isaiah moment in order to be true worshipers of God. This moment where we just see the bigness of who God is, the greatness of who God is. That He is just revealed in that way, that we realize that we have placed ourselves on the throne, and that because of that, things might go bad. Because He's the only one that deserves to be on that throne. My Isaiah moment, one of my Isaiah moments was my senior year at an advance. And it was at the barn. There's a few of you who has been at the barn at Pleasant Hill. Okay, you were there. And it was just, I don't know, like there's just some times where So anyways, let me explain the story here. Like, we're in this barn, and basically, let's just say it's basically the size of this room. And in the middle of the barn is someone had built a full-scale cross. There's Jason and Christina. Jason built this full-scale cross. There are all these candles around the cross, and it's in the middle of the room. Just imagine that. And then people are worshiping, they're playing music, and I feel like they were probably playing music for it felt like forever. It's probably 2-3 hours, and every single person in there, I guarantee that there isn't one person in there who just wasn't caught up in that. It's just our voices just echoed off of this barn, and it felt, I was like, I think we could actually blow the stinking roof off of this barn. I was just in just a place where I'm just worshiping God. I'm looking at the cross. I'm just, every part of me, every ounce of me is this is just what I want my entire life to look like. I could have stayed there and worshiped forever. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about my homework. I wasn't thinking about my mortgage. I wasn't thinking about a girl. I was just completely consumed with who God was in that moment. Just my face ripped off. Just those moments where you're just so satisfied in worship. And that's the thing. We were created to witness God, and we were created to worship Him. That is, if you guys are what is the meaning of life? That is the meaning of life right there. We were created to witness God, and we were created to worship Him. When we witness Him, we will worship Him. But the reality is that we just have these things in our lives that just get in the way. Let me use an analogy. It's as if we have this 4x4 sandbox. Go back to 8 years old with me. You're in this 4x4 sandbox, and you're just so consumed with building the sandcastle. You're I'm going to build the best sandcastle of all time. It's going to be amazing. And you're just focused on building the sandcastle. Then your dad comes out, and he's like, hey, we're going on a vacation in 15 minutes. I don't want to spoil it for you, but we're going on this vacation in 15 minutes. Get ready. But it just goes in one ear and it comes out the other ear because you're so focused on building the sandcastle. Then 5 minutes later, he comes out and he's like, we're leaving in 10 minutes. Get ready. Are you ready? Then he comes back out. And 5 minutes after that, he's like, in 5 minutes, everyone's packing up the car. Get your stuff ready. But we're so focused on building the sandcastle. Then it's everyone's in the car, we're going. This is your last call. Are you coming with us? And we just completely block them out. And because we are so focused and fixated on our sandcastle here, and then by the time that we are done, we realize that we have been left. And we're all alone. We don't even realize that the vacation that our Father was asking us to come to was a vacation to the beach, where we had hundreds upon hundreds of miles of sand at our disposal, but we are so fixated and focused on our little sandboxes. That is what we are doing when we look at God as something small, as something manageable, as something, like Chris said, that we can put in our backpack, instead of who He actually is. And that's the essence of sin. Sin does that. Sin reduces God to something really small. And it leaves us with something really small, as if God can compete and compare with our small little 4x4 sandcastles, when He has an entire beach available. When He's like, gosh, I just want to show you this. It's a lot bigger than your 4x4. There's this verse in 1 Samuel 5, and it talks about when the Philistines actually took the ark. They took the ark and they put it in their temple, and this temple was for their god. I think his name's Dagon, Dagon. But it's they also say Dagon for the sake of it. But basically you have Dagon, and they bring it into this temple with Dagon, and they go to sleep, and then the next morning, the Dagon is basically a statue, and the next morning the statue is on the ground in worship of the ark. The Philistines are okay, this is interesting. They put the god back on the little mantle, and then they go and do their business, and then the next day, the statue, his head's off, and his arms are off, and the body is at the ark again in worship. just this random story in Scripture that's so awesome because it just shows that God will not compete with all these other things for worship. Because all these other things just absolutely pale in comparison to who He really is. And this is what Isaiah realizes. Isaiah realizes, like, holy smokes, I've put other things on the throne. I've worshipped all these other things. I could get taken out by this God. And, like, I am a man of unclean lips. This is going to go really bad for me. But this is what God does. There's a seraphim that comes over, takes a coal from the altar, places it on Isaiah's lips, and says, your sin is atoned for. Your guilt is taken away. That is the cross for us. That is Jesus for us. That when we realize how big God is, we realize how much of a sinner and how distant and separated we are from God, that we need something, someone to do the impossible, this piece of coal to come and make us clean. And when Isaiah actually realizes what's going on, his response is like, I actually get to be in the presence of God. I get to have a relationship with this God who is absolutely otherworldly, this infinitely great God. I get an opportunity to have a relationship with this. It's unbelievable. Then God's like, well, who will go and share this message? And Isaiah's response is like, send me. Send me. When we witness God, we will worship God, and we will share God. And this is point number 3. Share. Invite others into the feast. Here's the thing. We are all natural sharers. Especially in our culture, we are natural sharers. We share our opinions. We share our likes and our dislikes. We share our pictures, our photos, articles, our most intimate detail, the most intimate details of our lives. We share it constantly on social media. Also, as people, we're natural sharers. If you like something, if you like a movie, if you like anything, you have to share it. It's just natural for us. This is what C.S. Lewis has to say about it. C.S. Lewis, in the Reflections on the Psalms, he says, the world rings with praise. Lovers praising their mistresses, readers their favorite poet, walkers praising the countryside, players praising their favorite game. Praise of weather, wines, dishes, actors, motors, horses, colleges, countries, historical personages, children, flowers, mountains, rare stamps, rare beetles, even sometimes politicians or scholars. I had not noticed how the humblest and at the same time the most balanced and capacious minds praise most, while the cranks, misfits, and malcontents praise least. I had not noticed either that just as men spontaneously praise whatever they value, they spontaneously urge us to join them in praising it. Isn't she lovely? Wasn't it glorious? Don't you think that magnificent? The psalmists, in telling everyone to praise God, are doing what all men do when they speak of what they care about. I think we delight to praise what we enjoy because the praise not merely expresses but completes the enjoyment. It is the appointed consummation. It is not out of compliment that lovers keep on telling one another how beautiful they are. The delight is incomplete till it is expressed. It's the same with us. When we witness God and when we worship God, we can't just put that on a shelf in a closet and never touch it again. When we basically embrace something that is so beautiful, we have to share it. It's just natural for us. If you have talked with Caleb for about 10 minutes about New York and about his experience to New York, because Caleb lived in New York for just a couple months, about a couple years ago. If you talk with him for about 10 minutes, he'll mention one name. And that one name is Luigi. Actually, maybe 2 names. The other name is Gio. So he'll mention both of those names. And if you don't know who Luigi is or what Luigi is and who Gio is, we had an opportunity. We were planning, Caleb and I were planning this trip to New York City last year. He's like, Andy, you gotta have Luigi's pizza. This pizza is so good. And this guy Gio, he's terrific. He's fantastic. He's like this Brooklyn guy, this Italian guy. He's like, you have to try this pizza. And I'm thinking, I've had New York style pizza before. I don't know if you guys like New York style, but I'm like, I've had it before. I'm like, Caleb probably hasn't had much New York pizza. It's probably like a pretty just a typical New York pizza. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go to Luigi's. Like, I'm ready to try it out. So we go to Luigi's, and he's like, he brings the entire team. Like, we get all together. We're going to have this dinner. We buy like these 3 pies. We're so excited. I mean, we go to the place, and it is literally like they're flinging the dough up in the air, and they're like, I mean, it's like a mom and pop. This place was actually in the movie Big Daddy, which is pretty cool little fact. And then like Gio, the owner, is there. He makes every pie. Like, he has his hand on every pie. How cool is that? And basically, he's making all these pies, and Caleb's like, I have been looking forward to this pizza for like 9 months. And I even brought people from Ohio, from Columbus, Ohio, to come and try your pizza. And Gio's like, well, that's terrific. You guys got to get this. You guys got to get these kids some shirts. So he goes and he gets us these T-shirts for Luigi's Pizza, which now I'm representing Luigi's Pizza with this T-shirt. How great does it say the greatest country in the world? Like, that's so random, but that's so awesome because that's Luigi. That's Gio. And so he gives us these shirts. He hands the pizzas over to Andrew Jod because Andrew Jod has been talking up this place too. So we basically we carry these pizzas over, and you just can you imagine like that grease smell of the pizza? I mean, come on, it's just so good. You have this wafting in, and he has this special pizza called the Fresh Pizza, and you basically put little strips of mozzarella, and then he puts like his homemade tomato sauce and this homemade olive oil basil pesto drizzle. I don't know if you like basil pesto, but that's like my favorite thing of all time. And he like drizzles it on there, and then I go and take the pizza in a New York style pizza. You have to flip it over. You can't just eat it like, come on, don't be a noob. Like, you have to flip it over because the grease sits in the middle of the pizza, and you eat this pizza, and it is like heaven. It's like one of the best pizzas I've ever had. And here's the point of the story. Caleb loved that pizza, and he's like, you guys have to come in, you have to have this pizza. That when we worship, when we witness something, when we experience something, when we see something, when we taste something, we have to worship it. And then when we worship it, that worship isn't complete unless we invite other people into that worship. He invited us into that worship. He invited me into that worship. And you know what I'm doing now? Now I'm sharing about Luigi's Pizza because of Caleb. That's what we are called to do. You read in verse 6 and 8, it says, ascribe, or 7 and 8, ascribe to the Lord, O families of nations, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength, ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name, bring an offering and come into His courts. David's basically saying, come to the feast. Come and see who God truly is. Come and worship. When we see God for who He is, we have to. I mean, it's not even a have to. Our worship isn't complete unless we bring people in. So now you're maybe asking the question, what do I do? So now what? How do I witness God? How do I worship? What do we do? And the fourth point is seek. Seek with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Wherever you're at in the spiritual journey, whether you've experienced God or you haven't experienced God, whether you even believe in God or you do believe in God, whatever it is, wherever you're at, we have an opportunity to seek. And here's the thing, if you felt like for a long time where you're like, I just feel dry, I feel like I haven't seen God, I get it. I felt that way for like 8 months. Just like, God, where are you? I'm doing the right things, but I just don't feel like I'm feasting on you. I don't feel like I'm worshiping. I'm just coming on Sunday, I'm working, I'm doing what I need to do, but I don't feel like I'm actually worshiping you. Have you felt that way? And here's the thing, we all have, it is in our control whether or not we meet with God. I don't know if you knew that. It is actually within our control. Because every day we have an opportunity to seek the face of God. Every day we have an opportunity to literally beg God and say, God, I will do anything in order to see you. I will do anything in order for you to reveal yourself to me. And maybe He will and maybe He won't. But that is the start. That is the start of all of this. Seek first the kingdom and all else will be given.
If we are seeking His face, seeking His feet, at His feet, just like begging to see Him, praying just like until we see God, we will witness Him, and we will worship Him, and then we will share Him. And as we share Him, we will be satisfied in Him. And then as we are satisfied in Him, we're like, I got to get more. So then we seek Him, then we witness Him, then we worship Him, then we have to share Him, then we are satisfied in Him, then we're like, I have to see more. And then we seek Him, then we witness Him, then we worship Him, and then we share Him. It's just this cycle. And it all starts at that point of, will we seek God? Will we sing a new song, or will we just be singing our old songs? And could you imagine a church of worshipers? Could you imagine a place where when people came, like, oh, like this, they're caught up immediately in worship? A church of worshipers seeking, experiencing, and marveling at the bigness of who God is. Could you imagine what could happen if we shared this? We shared this on our campus. We shared this at our jobs. We shared this to our city. We shared this to campuses across the world. If we shared this to our generation, could you imagine what it would look like for our generation if our generation caught this? If our generation caught the bigness of who God is, experienced the goodness of who God is, and then they just naturally share that. Could you imagine? Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Proclaim His salvation day after day. Declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous deeds among all peoples. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him. Strength and glory are in His sanctuary. Ascribe to the Lord, O families of nations. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name. Bring an offering and come into His courts. Will we come into His courts? Will we seek Him? Will we worship Him? Will we witness Him? Will we share Him? So I'm just going to I'm going to invite the band to come back up. And I'm just going to pray for us. And I'm just, use this time just to seek, just to worship, just to ask that you be able to witness God. Here's the thing. Every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, we go to the office. A few of us go to the office and we just pray. And what I found is that as I have sought the face of God, I've begun to witness who He is. And as I've been witnessing Him, I've been worshiping Him. It's been changing me from the inside out. That's an opportunity. That's just one application. That's just one opportunity for you guys. But just be thinking right now, what does it look like? What will you do in order to seek Him? So I'm just going to pray for us. Heavenly Father, God, Lord, I beg that we would seek it, that we would see You.